Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the Atwood Adventure Tag. So this tag was created by Bookworm Adventure Girl, and I was tagged by Mark over at Book Time with Elvis. And this is a tag inspired by the life of Margaret Atwood. So let's begin here. The first one is, before publishing her first collection of poetry in the early 60s, Margaret Atwood had several other jobs, including working at summer camps. What was your first job? Um, my first job, I guess the first real job that I had, um, that was, it paid and I did it over time, was mowing lawns one summer for an elderly gentleman who he was British, and he was known as Mr. Bob. And it was interesting to me as a young teen in the '90s, because it was the first openly gay man that I had, I guess, really talked to. That I didn't just see on television. His partner had died some years back, so he was alone, and he was getting older. So obviously, I was helping with mowing and raking and everything else. And then afterwards, he'd have iced tea made, and we would talk. And I remember, he didn't talk about his relationships or anything like that, but he was a big fan actually of Oasis, and he was like in his 70s, 80s. He was probably, I think he was around 80 years old at that point. So, to have somebody listening to the same music I was listening to at that time in the mid 90s, mid to early 90s, I thought was kind of interesting. His musical taste was actually more updated than my own father, who was half his age at that point. So yeah, I remember, Mr. Bob. It was an interesting conversations that I had with him. And My first steady job was at a retail store called Bradley's. It was pretty bad minimum wage pay, but I was 16, and I worked in the sight and sound department, and it wasn't often very busy. I had a lot of downtime. I would mostly spend a lot of time sitting back there with no customers, writing. I would just write kind of short stories and poetry, and I spent a lot of time doing that. The pay wasn't good, but it's also where I met my wife, so that works. Number two. While growing up, Margaret Atwood's family spent several months each year living in the bush in northern Ontario. Doesn't sound fun. What is a survival skill you have that would help you survive living off the grid? I think when Mark answered this, he had said delegating was a good skill of his, and I thought that was pretty good. I think I'm also pretty good at that. I don't have a very particular skill when it comes to survival. I mean, I did a lot of camping growing up. It was like tent camping, but I wasn't like hacking my way through the bush, and I was at like state parks and stuff like that. So civilization was always within reach. I guess my survival skill is I'm content with eating cans of beans for every meal. I don't really care. I don't know. That's what we're getting for that. Number three, Margaret Atwood grew up reading comics or comic books. Do you have a favorite comic book or comic book character? Yeah, when I was a kid, I loved, as far as my first comic strips, I loved Calvin and Hobbes. I love The Far Side. And I got into comics, like superhero comics, when I was probably around 10 or 11, when I read a Batman comic. So Batman quickly became a favorite, but then also very shortly after that, a friend of mine who was also really into comics, we both really bonded over, especially Spider-Man. I think this is during the Todd McFarlane days when he was drawing. So yeah, Spider-Man was always a really big one for me as well. But I've also loved other comics along the way. Conan comics I always have fun with. I still pick those up sometimes and read them. Hellblazer, John Constantine back when it was Vertigo. I used to read that one quite a bit. And of course, The Walking Dead, in its like first 100 issues, I used to pick up regularly and read that as well. Number four, Margaret Atwood, I can't speak, is not only a poet and author, she has also illustrated books and shown her creativity in so many other ways. What are some ways that you are creative? I make booktube videos. but I don't have good editing software, so I can't be that creative sometimes. I do like to write. I dabble. I'm starting to write a little bit more than I was because I kind of took a hiatus for a while. But I'm slowly kind of getting back into it, practicing a little bit of poetry, and I'd like to try and I think I want to start just trying short fiction, maybe some short horror fiction or something like that. Um, and of course, like getting games with my kids. I'm a teacher as well, so I have to be creative with my lesson plans and keeping them engaged. I'm creative in those ways. And before the pandemic, I was just starting to play some role playing games again, like you see over here, Dungeons and Dragons books. So, and I purposely did that in order to spark my creativity. Um, excuse me. I found that when I would try to write stories, because I was writing some fantasy stuff, and I was too rational about things. I wanted to force myself to think more whimsically and fantastically, and just have my mind be open to that stuff more. So that's one of the reasons why I gravitated back to Dungeons and Dragons, to kind of force myself into that much more epic, high fantasy, high magic storytelling, just as a way to kind of break the shackles of my brain that I felt were starting to constrict me, as far as, because I am very much a rationalist. I am a skeptic, but I didn't want that to ruin my fun. So, I started becoming creative in that way. But of course, the pandemic has affected that and the ability to get together with people. Number 5. Some of Margaret Atwood's writing is inspired by myths, folk tales, and fairy tales. What is your favorite myth, folk tale, or fairy tale, and why? I don't have one in particular, but as far as myths, I do love the Norse myths. I do like how kind of gritty they are. I love the idea of kind of Ragnarok, of even the gods knowing that they won't be around forever, and Yggdrasil, the world tree, this kind of cyclical nature to time. I really like that, and Odin, what he sacrificed to gain knowledge. I think that the Norse mythology aligns in many ways with my own worldview, with my preferences, with how my own psyche works. It just is a really good fit. I've even looked into things like atheopaganism, which is like an atheist form of paganism, in order to incorporate more pagan aspects into my life. And I am a highly secular person. I don't have a desire for religion in my life. I don't have a compulsion for ritual, but I realize that also without that, I kind of don't always pay close enough attention to the seasons, or talk about those who have passed enough with my children. So I've been looking into things like atheopaganism and bringing in some Norse religious aspects, in order to kind of fill out my calendar and make me focus on those things more. It's like tricking my brain. Again, kind of like I did with the Dungeons and Dragons, a way to trick my brain into concentrating on things that I want to think about, but that I am not very good at. So Norse myths certainly are a big part of what I like. And I also love folk beliefs about witches and vampires and how those kind of go into the horror genre. And I think most especially ghosts. I'm fascinated by ghost stories. I don't believe in ghosts, but I think that the stories we tell about ghosts is very revealing in a lot of ways. It says a lot about our relationship with the past, with history, with things that we've kind of left unresolved. So, those are the sorts of things that I gravitate towards. Number 6, Margaret Atwood's most well-known novel is The Handmaid's Tale. What is a task or chore you wish you had a maid or servant for? It'd be nice to have a nanny sometimes. I got 2 younger kids. But I think more so, I'd rather have like a personal mechanic or a handyman. When something goes wrong with the car, or if I need a tune-up, or if something, goes wrong with the house, I can just be like, hey, Jeeves, can you get that done before noon so I can go take a drive or something? That's what I would rather have. I can do some laundry and everything else, but that stuff, I didn't grow up with a father who was a handyman. So a lot of stuff I've had to learn on my own, and I have very little patience for it. My wife enjoys it more than I do, so she's always willing to do it with me. But I just, I find that I don't necessarily have like ADD, but I feel like I do with that. I have a hard time concentrating on that stuff for a long time. Next one, 7. The themes Margaret Atwood writes about have stayed consistent in all her writing for over 6 decades. She writes about the role of men and women in society, relationships, religion, marriage, and identity, to name a few. If Atwood were to write a novel about you, what are some themes she would need to include? I would say embracing doubt over certainty and skepticism over faith. That would be a big one for me. I would say themes about monstrosity and darkness, both an attraction to those things and a desire to understand them. Themes about parenting and what we leave behind. And also just intellectual pursuits, I think. I don't know if that's a theme, but trying to understand the past so as to better understand the present and ourselves. I think those are all themes that I guess would somehow tie into writing about me. 8. Margaret Atwood has created words for her novels. She has talked about how this makes it difficult for translators of her work. Do you have a favorite word? What is your favorite? Or why is it your favorite? Sorry. I have to echo, I saw David Wiley's answer to this, and I have to echo what he said because I entirely agree. He had talked about how he has spoken of kennings, like in Beowulf and Old English or Old Norse, which is like the combining of two words in order to kind of create almost like a new meaning. I think one of my favorite ones was one that from last year, the Saga Long reading for Njaal's Saga. There was a great one for when they referred to the skull. I think they called it the brain fort. And I had a good chuckle off of that. It works. But I love the things they would name their weapons, like leg biter and stuff like that. Those are also my favorites. I have to completely agree with David Wiley on that. Number 9. Margaret Atwood was born in Canada and lives in Canada now, but she has also lived in other countries like the United States, England, France, Germany, and Scotland. What countries have you lived in, and or what is another country you would like to live in? I've only ever lived in the U.S. I've traveled to Europe, South America, parts of Canada, and some of the islands, like Bermuda, Bahamas. I've traveled, but I haven't lived in other. New England has always been my home, Connecticut. If I could pick like a second home in another country, it would probably be Europe somewhere, someplace that was walkable, close to a train station, maybe, that has some good bookstores around, good historical places things to see. It'd be great if there's a castle nearby too, that sort of thing. I do want to go back to Europe. I did really enjoy it, but I don't have a specific place for that. Number 10, Margaret Atwood is an advocate for caring for the earth. What is something you do to help take care of our planet? I recycle. I try to raise responsible humans and, impart good habits on students. I will sometimes pick up garbage around. I don't just stop on the side of the road and do that, but if I see garbage around my area, around my house, or along my street, I'll pick it up and throw it out. But yeah, try to be conscious. I can't say that I'm terrific at all of this stuff, but I do try. And number 12. Number 11. Yeah, Margaret Atwood is passionate about human rights, and some of her writing has included animals and reflections on animals. What is a topic that you are passionate about? I have a lot of causes that interest me. Animals are something that I certainly care about. I do give to local organizations that help animals. I would say the things that if you're talking about politically active, I do get kind of politically active as far as like writing letters and stuff like that when it comes to issues of like church-state separation and historical preservation and education, and also that history is not being misused to misinform the public. We've certainly seen that at different time periods. Having accurate public history is something that I find very important. So yeah, that's not going to be what everybody is concerned about, but yeah, it's what makes the world go round. We all have different things that we're passionate about. And those are the things that get me the most fired up. 12. Margaret Atwood is supportive of new authors in a variety of ways. Who is a newer author, and/or what debut novel do you wish more people knew about? I'm not really sure about this one. I know that there are some booktubers out there who have recently published some things, but I haven't read those things yet, and I don't want to, I feel like I'll sound very empty and shallow if I'm just start naming off people who I'm vaguely aware of some of their stuff. Sorry if that makes me a bad booktuber. And 13 is just tag some of your favorite booktubers. Again, this is one of those ones that I think most of the people who do these type of tags, I think have done them. But if you're interested in this and you haven't done it yet, just consider yourself tagged. And that is the Atwood Adventure Tag. So thank you to Bookworm Adventure Girl for creating it. And of course, thank you to Mark, Book Time with Elvis, for tagging me. And as always, thank you, BookTube.